My name is Bryan Calhoun, and you've been tuned in to Heavy Talk.
What's up, guys? This is Jason Jeter. Welcome to a new edition of Heavy Talk, a one-on-one conversation with proven industry experts. This week, I'm speaking with Bryan Calhoun, the founder and CEO of Business Toolbox. So Bryan, please pick up on that. You're saying it's weird to you when people call you an expert.
Yeah, man. It's just funny. Sometimes, I think about it. People refer to me as an expert and an OG and stuff. But like the OG, I get a little bit more. But like the expert, when I think about it, it's like I'm always learning, though. You know what I mean? So people get in trouble when they start thinking about themselves too much in that light, because you got to always be learning. Things are changing and evolving. You got to find out what works and test stuff and see what happens and see what doesn't. You know what I mean? So like you got to always be testing. So I mean, quite frankly, man, anybody can do that. You know what I mean?
But to your point, though, like I feel like that's what makes you an expert, right? Just based on the idea of, I've ran more tests than most people. You know what I'm saying? Like, so now I have more data to base my
I feel you.
My hypothesis off of, for real.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Whereas, like you said, anyone can go and shoot 1,000 jump shots a day.
Yeah.
How many people actually do it for?
You're gonna do it right.
3 years in a row every day. You know what I'm saying? Like, so to me, I think absolutely, bro. I say this: I consider you an expert. Because
appreciate that, bro. That means a lot coming from you.
Nah, dead serious. And what you do, of course, it's evolved from the beginning of when you and I first met.
Yeah.
Well, you had the unique conversation. Like you was the guy like in the room that really was talking from a certain lens that nobody else in the room was speaking from, And to me, I think even just if you can kind of speak on that a little bit for real, how'd you get in this space? Yeah. When I met you, I don't even remember what your exact title was how I was introduced to you, but I know that your conversation was, in the music tech type of space, looking at data and things of that nature.
Everybody's journey is different in this industry. So when people say like, what do I have to do to make it? Like, I want to do it like so-and-so, you got to do it like yourself. Everybody's journey is different. And, initially, I mean, I started out, you may not even know this about me, but like, dude, in the very beginning, man, I was a DJ. Like, that's how I started. I was DJing and I was doing parties and stuff at the University of Georgia, where I was a student, and I started doing concerts and, booking shows. And, in the early 90s, that was, people take for granted now that hip hop artists perform, at clubs and stuff everywhere. I said, man, clubs did not want to deal with hip hop artists, period.
Yeah.
Back then, right? So it was some groundbreaking stuff. And from there I started doing street promotions like we all did, right? Everybody, had to do street promotions and the come up. That was definitely a stop for pretty much everybody.
Yep.
And then ended up getting a gig doing and I was working for a bunch of labels doing street promotions and DJing. And I don't know if you remember, man, but I was a DJ at 112 for like, yeah, man.
I didn't know that, man.
It was me right after. I don't know if you remember Alan, the big white dude who was the head DJ there for years.
Listen, I'll say this. You're talking about the original 112 in the plaza. So when I was going to 112, that's when I first moved to Atlanta, and I was young and I was broke, So that 112, I definitely, I knew Lonnie at the door. You know what I'm saying? Like it was only a few people that I really knew.
Yeah.
And I didn't know Lonnie, like he didn't know me, but I just knew him because we knew that he was running things, right? But I was very broke. So at that 112 era, I was there and I was on the dance floor and I had a great time, but I really didn't know anybody.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, when I first started going to 112 and I developed a relationship with the DJ, Albert was his name.
Okay.
He was, he was the one that kind of like was teaching me about like really how to do. I had been DJing, but he was the one that like helped me sort of like, with sort of like some of the technical stuff to be better technically.
Yep.
And you know, I was just going in there with records, trying to get, you know, that's how I got in free. I was like, hey, I got the new record from Epic, Def Jam, or
I
whatever.
should be on that hustle. I wasn't on that hustle.
Yeah, man. Oh man, they would let you. And I'd break the guys off at the front with like a, you know, a CD or a tape.
Sure,
You know,
yeah.
tapes back then, T-shirt or something like that, and that's how I would work my way in. But like, you know, from there, then I ended up getting a gig. I was working with a bunch of labels, and I was doing stuff with Relativity Records, and they asked me to start, you know, funneling independent stuff to them. Like, hey, if you know about something, you know, that's like bubbling, you know, let us know. Now, you gotta remember, this is 97. This is a long time ago, right?
I was around Relativity Records then. My friend Hussein Fatal was signed to Relativity for a hot second.
Oh yeah. That's right. Oh man, that takes me back. So I was there, and like the A&R head of A&R at Relativity was like, have you ever heard of this group called? It's called 666 or something like that. And I was like, yeah, it's 3 6 Mafia, and I ended up like getting all these 3 6 Mafia like mixtapes and CDs and stuff, and sent them to New York. And I was like, yeah, you know, here's what people are saying about it. I think it'd be a great opportunity if you could sign them.
Yep.
So they end up signing them, and then they hired me to be their A&R. And that was my first like record label gig.
Okay.
And you know, so I jumped in and started, but you know, it was interesting, you know, because I was an A&R rep at a label, but I was based in Atlanta. Right. And you know, most of the A&R guys were in New York, especially at that time.
Sure.
To a lesser extent, LA, but you know, it was mostly New York.
Yep.
You know, and of course, LaFace was, you know, crazy popping in Atlanta at that point. But you know, it was just, it gave me an interesting insight. And then from there, I went. You know, so I was doing A&R, ended up doing marketing. I moved to New York, did marketing. Relativity and Loud merged. You know, so 3 6 Mafia obviously blows up. Now, here's a mistake that I made. You know, because I want people to learn from my mistakes.
Okay.
So the first record we did was the Chapter 2 World Domination record, right? Okay. Which was a big record. It went gold. So the first record I A&R went gold.
Nice. Congrats.
Right. I thought that shit was easy and normal.
Of course.
I thought that shit was normal, dude.
Trust me, I get it.
Dude, I didn't realize until later what a huge accomplishment that was and how hard that was.
Yep.
But whatever, you know, it was successful. I was doing a lot of marketing for it because, you know, New York was still Relatively was a New York-based label, and they had a New York sensibility. I mean, they had, you know, Beat Nuts and Common and Fat Joe
records, man.
You know,
I used to be in the office, and what was unique about them though, like you said, it was so New York, but then they still had like the Dayton family over in like
Dayton,
Ohio,
yes,
3
and
6
Suave House. Remember, and it's Suave House,
Suave House,
G and Tila.
Yep, Bone Thugs,
Bone Thugs, dude.
Like super dope hip hop label back then, for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, so I'm telling you a long way about getting to, you know, to answering your question, but I think it's important because I think people need to make their own way and figure their own way out. And then from working at Relativity, I worked at Red Distribution, which is a distribution company, and set up and helped create this division called Red Urban Music Marketing. And we basically helped the independent, and it's still running today. It's crazy. But basically, we helped independent urban labels, hip hop labels that were distributed through Red, navigate the complexities of putting your record out through a big distribution system. And it's complicated. Like, let's be clear, especially back then with physical distribution.
It was way different. It was far more complicated, right? It was more complicated. You wouldn't have a certain amount of money and things of that nature, right?
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, so I was really involved in that. And one of the best pieces of advice somebody ever gave me was, if you really want to understand how a business works, follow the flow of money through it. Like, how does money really flow through the business? And so, you know, I was doing A&R marketing. So the other part of that piece of advice was, you're the cool guy, right? And I look, let me just say, I'm not cool, right? Like, I don't want anybody to say, oh, that dude Bryan Calhoun says he's cool. Like, I'm not. I'm a nerd. I claim it. I own it, right? But I had the title. I was an A&R guy, right?
Yeah. And let's be honest. You're the black guy. You're automatically a cool guy in certain people's eyes.
That's true. That's true.
Let's look at natural powers, man.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Exactly. That's part of our superpowers, right? But what he said was, yo, take the finance guys out to lunch.
Mhm.
Right? Nobody takes them out to lunch. Nobody wants to talk to them.
No one talks to those guys. They're on a different floor and everything. Yeah.
Nobody talked, but they knew everything. They knew everything. And like, so I got down with like the people who did the A&R admin, the lawyers, the finance guys. And they would like, they started just out, they'd like, you know, what's it like being in the studio and going on the road? You know, and I would tell them some, you know, a couple of stories, and they'd be like, oh, it's crazy. I'd be like, but you know, how does this work? How did you guys set the budget? And they would be giving me like P&L statements and all. So now I have like, I'm like, oh, this is how the shit really works, right? So it gave me a huge amount of insight that I didn't have before. And, you know, so taking that, my next step in my journey was working at an independent label called Warlock Records, which was small label, like 15 employees.
Yep.
But, you know, we had records that sold hundreds of thousands of copies.
Warlock, big. Who was Warlock based out of?
New York. I was living in New York at this time. I had moved to New York while I was working at Relativity. They'd asked me to come up. I was like, you know, it was a good opportunity. I'm still young. I was like, yo, let me go to New York and try this, right? But when I got there, you know, so it was great. And then I ended up, you know, there was merger. You know how label stuff is, man. It's like, you know, mergers and layoffs and acquisitions and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of bounced around a little bit and ended up at this label called Warlock, where me and my boy MC Search from Third Base did a joint venture at Warlock. And man, now this was a really, you know, sort of like trial by fire, because now I'm at this little label, but I'm taking all this information that I had learned from Red Distribution and Relativity and applied it to like records that I was putting out, where I was doing everything from A&R in the record, going to the studio, going on the road with the artist, doing the marketing plans, doing the goal evaluation form, setting up co-op ad programs.
Independent for real.
For real, all the way through. And, you know, it was an incredible experience. And then part of what I realized throughout this, and look, I'm also I was a finance major at University of Georgia. Like I'm a numbers guy. And I think a lot of our counterparts, you know, can be scared of numbers. And I think you got to embrace it. And that's what I did, probably more so than it was probably necessary. But ultimately what I realized was that labels were doing a poor job of managing their finances. Like they weren't doing projections well. Like literally I had this epiphany when I was working at Relativity. And I was like, hey, I told the owner of the company that I had an idea for a compilation record back when people used to do compilations still. And he was like, all right, well, how much do you think it's going to cost to license these records? And what do you think we can sell? And what is our, you know, publishing liability going to be? And we kind of like scribbled some numbers down. He's like, all right, let's give it a try. And sort of like with that, and that was all the analysis we did. But with that, we committed hundreds of thousands of dollars to a project. And I remember thinking, man, if this record doesn't sell, like we might not make payroll, right? I mean, it was that serious. So I started going. So I went back to like this spreadsheet that the finance guys at Relativity gave me.
Yep.
They did projections.
Yep.
It was very basic, and I just started building it out. And ultimately, I built software that I ended up licensing to independent labels for them to do projections. So cash flow analysis, profitability analysis, how many records you needed to sell to break even, and that kind of thing. And I started licensing that to labels.
Yep.
And around that time, I was really seeing the transition in the industry. So now you're talking about like 2002, 2003, and the transition had happened from, you know, the first 3 6 Mafia record that I was involved in A&Ring, you know, that was on 2-inch tape. You remember the days of the big 2-inch reels.
Yeah.
It went from 97 doing that to like 2001, everything was hard disk recording. So in 4 years, that transition was complete.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, more people are going to put out records. More people need to know how to do this stuff. And so I was like, well, let me try to scale out this software and allow more people to use it. And then crazy, I was at the BSLA conference, which is a Black Entertainment and Sports Lawyers Association conference. And I was showing my software to a number of people, and there's this one, and I was like it was crazy. It was like these lawyers were just like sitting around by like in the hotel lobby, and I had my computer and everybody's gathered around and I'm showing it to people. And there's this one lady was like, It's like, that's really interesting. You know, my son has a joint venture deal, but it's with a major. I know you're talking about this being with indies. Would this work for us? And I was like, yeah, the numbers are probably just bigger. So it turns out that was Donda West. It was Kanye West's mom. And then like literally next month I had Kanye as a client. And I was like working with Kanye on good music. And I was literally running the numbers for him on my software for good music. Were like John Legend and Consequence and all that kind of stuff. And so I started working with them really closely. And that's how I really got close to like Al Branch and G. Roberson and hip hop and that crew, and started really, and you know, we've been rocking together for, you know, 16, 17 years now at this point, even though I knew them because Relativity and Rockefeller were in the same building.
See, I always tell those stories, bro. Like,
yeah.
I used to be there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would be there. You remember Yawanda Boot?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what happened to her, but yo, I used to be in Relativity.
No. Not okay. You're right. There was Yawanda Carter as the lawyer. Owanda Booth.
Exactly. A&R.
She did A&R Relativity.
A&R at Relativity.
Yeah.
So that was my guy's A&R, and it was pretty much, you know, like I went to high school in Montclair, so I grew up with these guys. Hussein Fatal, Gaddafi, Young Noble of the Outlaws, you know, and I went to Hampton for a year. I had personally interned my senior year in high school at Arista Records.
Oh wow.
Went to Hampton. After Hampton, knew I wanted to be in the music business, so I was like, I'm dropping out, you know. And right around that point is when Fatal got his deal at Relativity, you know. So he was pretty much like, yo, the door's open. This is what I'm doing now. If you want to come, figure it out. Door's open, you know. And I, you know, came back to New York, and I was always at Relativity, bro. Like almost probably most of the week I would be at Relativity.
Dude, that's so crazy, man. Like we had to have like overlapped.
Absolutely.
Up at that point, man.
Yeah.
But so anyway, yeah, you know, and then you know, and look, from there, I also was like, I kind of made the transition. I made a very intentional decision that I was like, man, I know I'm not like the thing that I'm good at, the thing that I'm best at is not picking records. It's not being in the studio with artists. Like I need to play up my strengths.
That's right.
And as I saw that the industry was changing, I also was like, man, man, you know, like this point, like I'm like 30 and, you know, getting into my 30s, and I'm like, I don't want to be in the studio until 4 o'clock every morning. You know what I mean? Every day.
Yeah.
You know, going on the road like that. It's hard. It's a hard life.
It's a hard life.
People think glamorize it, man. It's hard.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, what can I do? And so I like started building out the software more. I started licensing it to artists. I started working with, you know, Good Music and Kanye and the Hip Hop's 1978 crew, and really made it a very intentional decision to go and learn as much as I could about the digital space. Because I was like, man, I'm telling you another pivotal moment in my career. I was working at I was working at Warlock, and this is a history lesson for y'all young folks. iTunes launched, not Apple Music. When iTunes launched, they first launched where you could buy downloads. The track was 99 cents. It's still available, but I know they're going to be shutting it down sometime soon. But buy an album for $9.99 and buy a single for 99 cents, right? When they first launched, it was only available to the major labels. So I was working at an indie, and we didn't have our stuff up on there. Well, after they got it up and running, they opened it up to the independent labels. So I got to represent Warlock, and I went to Apple to the meeting where Steve Jobs held a meeting where he opened it up. And like, look, I didn't meet Steve Jobs, but I was in the room.
You was in the room.
I was in the room.
That's history right there, though, man.
Yeah, I was in the room.
Man.
I was in the room. And he said, and so he was like, hey, look, he was really a trip too, but he was like, hey, this is what we're doing. You know, if you want in, this is the deal. We're not negotiating with you. Opt in, opt out. I don't care. Do what you want to do. But I went back, and being the nerd that I am, the first thing I did was I read the contract. So they email us the contract. So I'm back in my hotel room and I'm reading the contract and I'm working through the numbers. And I'm like, man, we're gonna make more money off of selling an album, a digital album for $9.99 than we will off of selling a CD for $18. We'll make more money off of that.
Absolutely.
I was like,
physical.
that was a pivotal moment in my career. And I was like, this business is going to be digital for sure.
Yeah.
And so then I really just started focusing my energy there. And like, I started going to every conference I could go to. I'm going to like all of these, like this CTIA, which is like a mobile conference. And then, and, you know, Billboard used to do this thing called Music and Money, and, you know, the MIDEM, which is the biggest music conference in the world. It's held in the south of France every year. You know, I'm pulling, you know, I wasn't, you know, I'm also kind of like between jobs trying to figure out my next thing in life. And I remember I spent $6,000 to go to the south of France to MIDEM, so I could like learn and meet people.
Yeah.
But it was totally worth it. And I got my education by going to these conferences. And I tell young people all the time, man, because I get frustrated because I don't see Black people in these rooms in the numbers that they need to be, and I don't see people representing hip hop in these rooms in the numbers that we need to be. Quite frankly, so like San Francisco Music Tech, and even at you know, conferences like South by Southwest, where you know everybody knows about them, but like being in the rooms where the experts are there talking, and so what I started doing, I started going to these conferences, and here's another tip, the piece of advice I tell everybody, like man, the first conference I went to, like I went to MIDEM, and then I went to this conference called the Future of Music Coalition.
Okay.
They were talking about stuff I was like, what are they talking about? They were just like, they were talking from like another planet, the way they were talking.
Yeah.
Like, you know, talking about like MySpace and, you know, so they called it the celestial jukebox. They're like, I remember guys doing, he said, imagine being able to listen to any song on your phone wherever you are. And you don't even have to have the file on your phone. It'll be streamed to you. 2002, 2003, that sounded crazy. I was like, what is he talking about?
Man, bro, I remember Barry Wise told me, he was the first person to tell me that same thing. Like, yo, the future of, you know, of the business, you know, like cable television, subscription based.
Yeah.
Pay a monthly fee and have limited access. And like you say, you're just like, huh? Like, how did we get there? What are you talking about? You know, like, yeah. So I know what you mean.
But, man, but like the thing was that like going to these conferences is where I started learning about that stuff.
Sure.
You getting access. So like I always tell people like going like ASCAP does like this really great conference. CD Baby does this really great conference. Future Music is coming back. They're about to do their thing again. And a lot of them are doing things online too right now too. So
sure.
Not, you know.
Is it possible for you to email over, so you know, even with this content that we put out, we can include that note, like, hey, here's some.
Yeah, for sure.
Bryan, yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, for sure. I'll send some links to some conferences.
Look, because I want to go to a lot. Especially now. That's the upside now, right? I don't have to go spend money to get to the south of France now. You know, like. That's right. So it works in people's favor in a sense right now. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, that's kind of, you know, that was really my journey. The whole thing is like, so I just really focused on, that's how I just like came to the point where I was going to transition and focus in the digital space. And then when I did it, because I was one of not very many people, especially, you know, Black guys doing it, like I ended up kind of just being like the default guy. We're going to it, right? So, and then of course I'm super fortunate because now I've got like clients like Kanye West, and like I was doing some stuff for Ludacris at the time, and Microsoft and whatnot. But like it put me in a really good position to be able to even do more. It's like the more you do, the more you're able to do. You know, because the more access you got, like. You know, it is when you once you have a client that starts like really popping, you have a client that's really doing something, man, you start getting invited to stuff that you didn't even know existed. Right. And access to stuff and then but then once you're in those rooms, you gotta step up and show and prove. And one of the ways that like I really like learned and met people and networked was when going to these conferences.
you know, and as I was referencing the Future Music Conference, man, I did not know anybody in the room. I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm there, but what I did was I would go to the panels that I was super interested in, and I would be the first person to ask a question when the panel was over. Like, you know, it's, oh, we're gonna open up for questions. I was always the first person. And I would start by introducing myself.
Yep.
And saying briefly what I did. It's like, hey, I'm Bryan Calhoun. I have this software to help independent labels do better financial modeling or whatever. And then I would ask a question. And at that point, my question was kind of irrelevant. What I wanted to do was introduce myself to the room. And then what happened was people who had an interest in what I was doing found me.
Sure.
Right. And dude, I still do that to this day.
Makes all the sense in the world. Like you said, I'm going to commandeer this situation, right?
Dude, do it. Use it. I tell everybody, man, use it. It works. It works. Yeah. So anyway, man, but like, so I just have to say is like, but like, you know, the digital space is now like the core of the business. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I just feel fortunate, you know, because I'm in there and I've got lots of great clients and I've got great relationships at like, the YouTubes and the Pandoras and the Spotify's and the Apples of the world. I've got good relationships with all those folks, and same thing with the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the Twitters, you know?
Yep. Your timing was very good. Obviously you had the Werewolf Wall, and I think the key is like you saw, like you were honest with yourself, like, and really strategic of saying, where can I be the most successful and impactful at, and really going in on that. And I think that, when you read people's stories and like you said here, the route to success, we get to those moments where we got to really strategically make some real non-emotional decisions, right? And
yes,
and like, how can I contribute and add value? I think that that's the part that, for me meeting you on day one, that's the part that I thought was smart off top. Like, wow, he's the only guy talking about this stuff. You know what I'm saying? So that there goes back to, like you said, how we started. Of course you're an expert, bro. Like, you've been talking about this. This has been your conversation years before so many of us even really saw the value of it, So, I mean, you've been, like you said, putting in all of these man hours, all of the work. To me, I have problems with people who haven't really accomplished much trying to call themselves experts, I think that no matter what, like, none of us are perfect. So we're always going to be learning and getting better, but that's truly what makes us experts, as they say, we learn the most at our failures, and through these experiences. But, to be an expert, you got to have a lot of accomplishments too, right?
Man. No, and it's so right. Like, an L isn't a loss, an L is a lesson.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So how do you get to the idea, of course, of the toolbox, the music toolbox?
Yeah. It was interesting because, I started out, as I mentioned, where it was really around the numbers, around the financial component of it, and doing, a break-even analysis. Like, if I spend X, how much do I have to make my money back, right? I mean, it's a very simple core question. A lot of people don't even ask that. So I built this software, and I had a client. It was wild, man. It was this guy, and his son wanted to start a record label, and the guy had a bunch of money, and so he basically gave his son, like, the guy had spent $750,000 to start a record label, and it was his son. It was like, he was 20 years old. He didn't know what he was doing. Sure. He was getting, and the game. What happened to him. He was getting abused by these producers.
Everybody was taking their turn.
They were taking their turn. Oh, it was brutal, man. It was brutal. And so basically, the dad was like, and he was a numbers guy. He had like a construction business, right? He was a numbers guy.
Yep.
So when I stepped in, I was like, all right, well, hey, here's how much you've spent. Here's how many records you're gonna have to sell to break even. Here's what you're gonna have to do to turn a profit. Right. And he was like, oh, wow, this is great. So now he has like a sense of that. Right.
Sure.
And I'm giving him context because everybody thinks, oh, it's easy to go gold.
Yep.
And it's hard.
Yep.
It's hard. And especially if you're an independent, a truly independent.
Going diamond.
Oh, it is.
Like,
it is. If you're independent, you go gold, it's like going diamond.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's a good perspective. But what happened was, so he calls me after a bit and he's like, hey, we got all the stuff together. Now we got to sing, I got the numbers together. I feel much better about that. But we've got a record, we've got a single that we're ready to start pushing. Can you connect me with someone at SoundScan so that we can get this thing on the radio and start making some money? Yeah. And I was like, SoundScan? Like, well, SoundScan has nothing to do with radio play, right? And for everybody who's listening, you're watching this right now, SoundScan measures sales, right? SoundScan it's owned by this company called Nielsen now, and when you look at the charts, it's based on SoundScan numbers, right? How many records did you sell this week to go onto the charts, right? Has absolutely nothing to do with how many getting your song added to a radio station playlist.
Looking for BDS or something like that.
Right. So even BDS only measures it. It doesn't help you. He thought SoundScan was going to get the song added to a radio station. Like he had no idea.
Okay, God. So he just had no idea. Period.
No idea what he's talking about. And I had this thought that I was like, man, here's a guy who has $750,000 to blow and doesn't know like really basic stuff, right? So I was like, okay, what does that mean for the guy who's got $10,000? What chance does he have, right? And so literally what I did, I started putting things together about the business that I knew, and then put the music business toolbox together. And a lot of it was things like that because I was working with a number of like independent labels, and they all had a lot of the same questions. It's like, what are ISRC codes? What are UPC codes?
Sure.
SoundScan, how do I get distribution? How much should I spend in marketing? What's, just like all these, sort of like, how do I register my copyrights? Like all this stuff. And what I realized was that information wasn't in any one place. It just wasn't anywhere. It was like all over the place.
Yep.
If it was anywhere. And then because of my time working at labels, some things like I built myself. So it's like, I was a product manager at the label. So I had to make marketing plans. Every time I had a record, I had to make a marketing. So I just had my own sort of like template that I started with. Of
course.
So I was like, okay, well, in addition to this book with all that information in it, let me put tools together of things that people need. So it's like a template for a marketing plan, a template for a business plan, and a one sheet for sales solicitation, a release schedule checklist. So all the things you need to do leading up to the release of your record, because there's a ton of stuff that you got to do leading up to your record. It's a ton of stuff. Keeping track of all the marketing items you made. Like when I was a product manager at Relativity, I would make a bunch of t-shirts or posters and hats and all that kind of stuff. And then all the people in different departments would always ask me for stuff. So like, the sales part guy wanted some, and then the radio guy wanted some, the street team wanted some. And how did I keep track of all that? Well, I just created a sheet to do that. But even if you're just a guy doing it on your own, how do you keep track? If you make 500 shirts or 200 posters, how do you allocate that stuff? Just like, so I have like just a tool to keep track of what you make and, all that kind of stuff and the costs of it. And then doing your budgets, and the budgeting tool is really detailed. I mean, it's got like, a marketing tab where it's got things like, out of home. So are you going to do billboards? And the truth is, like, you got a $5,000 budget for everything. There's no way you're going to do a billboard. But what it does is it forces you to ask the question. Now you may put a 0 in there for billboards.
But what else am I gonna do now, right?
What else? All right. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna do some paid advertising on, Facebook and YouTube? Yep. Probably. You should. If you only got a few $1,000, that's probably the best marketing money you can spend. Doing that. You know what I'm saying? So, so it's got the detail. So you plug in that. You can plug in the information about like what your sales projections are, revenue projections from streaming, and then you can see like, okay, well, man, I'm gonna have to do this in order for me to make my money back.
Yep.
And then, man, just some of the other stuff. It's like, some of like the contracts, man. Like people forget that, and I've seen people end up in really tight spots because, for instance, they get somebody to do their album artwork, right? Mm-hmm. You pay somebody $50 or $500 or $5,000, whatever it is you pay them.
Yep.
what if you take that artwork and put it on a t-shirt? Well, if you haven't agreed with the guy or girl who did that artwork, they might come back and be like, nah, buddy, you can't do that, and hit you with a lawsuit. And I saw that exact thing happen.
Yes. Which, like you said, to the common person, just common sense wise, you feel like in the real world, hey, I paid you for it, it's mine.
That's right.
Whatever I want to do with it. Like,
right.
But
that ain't,
man, it gets tricky.
So like I have got like a work for hire agreement, and there's actually several different versions of it. So there's like a work for hire for artwork. There's one for a side artist, side artist.
Producer agreements as well, right?
Producer agreement. A musician, who could, somebody plays guitar on your record, man, make sure you have the rights to use it for everything.
Listen, man.
And I just say about like the contracts. One of the things that drives me nuts about like, I see these things online where it's like, get a management contract, download here. And it's basically you put your name in at the top and then sign it. Man, those things are the worst. Like, because they're the worst. So the way I did it is like, it's a series of questions, and you respond to the question, and there's logic on the back end. So it builds the contract based on how you respond to the questions.
That's really cool.
So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, really cool. It's pretty dope, man. Check it out. So it's like, I mean, like I've even got things like we're gonna talk. This is level 301 class here, but it's like I've got like a sunset clause in the management agreement that you can break out so that it's a year or 6 months or however much time you want. You can break it into parts and modify the percentages in the sunset clause. So things like that.
Listen, man, I think with this resource is so incredible for specifically an early stage artist, an early stage manager, early stage team, right? Because something that we know is of course, when you're just starting, like you mentioned, the art, let's get the contract, let's get the paperwork right. But the art, so often you see people not handle things at all and leave them open-ended because they didn't know, or, and then on the flip side, you truly, really cannot afford to pay a lawyer for everything.
Man.
And that's the part that so many people really, let's be honest, certain things, and even like the contract that I present for our partnerships with artists, I really put in a lot of work to make it readable. You know what I mean? Like not too long, so that for real, like someone, you and your parent, you and whoever it is, you guys can sit here and read through this yourself and see the points. My thing is so transparent. 80-20 is you sign a deal, 24 months from an 80-20 to a 50-50 to an 80-20, And of course there's things in between that, but I purposely try to, because I know that realistically, man, like what are you gonna go? Like a lot of people can't really go to lawyers for this simple stuff for real,
Man, listen, Jason, I'm so on board. I it's crazy, and like one of the things. And it's funny. I argue with attorneys on panels sometimes because I say you should not have a lawyer look at everything that you sign. Like you shouldn't. Now there are some exceptions to that for sure.
Of course.
Like when you pick a performing rights organization, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, ASCAP isn't going to negotiate with you individually as a brand new writer.
No.
What's on their website is what you got to agree to those terms.
It's basic.
You know what I mean? CD Baby, TuneCore, DistroKid, they're not going to negotiate with you individually. What's on the website is what you got to agree to that, right? Now, you should know what's in it, but just know that you're not going to be able to negotiate that.
Yep.
Now, when you have to, that's the big thing is when you start assigning rights. When someone says you're signing with me as an exclusive recording artist, that's when you better get an attorney to look at it. That's when things start getting, when things for real, you got to start having someone look at it. But yeah, man, it's hard. And, and I recognize that like, individual, new artists. I mean, some people are still, you're still students or you're, I mean, at this point, there's high school students doing it.
Man, listen, man.
Can you drop 3 racks just to have a lawyer look at an agreement?
The technology has made everything so accessible that,
Yeah.
to your point, man, it's these kids, man. We have a guy, a young kid, must be 12 years old. He comes to our open sound checks every week and he raps. So he's at that point where he doesn't have equipment, he doesn't have songs yet, right? Yeah. But of course, he's online, he's doing what he can do with that's available for him. But just to your point, man, like it's not like the 2-inch tape days. Like kids stuff at super early age, man, and getting traction. When you think about the NLE Chopper, kid who just graduated high school, I was like, wow, that's impressive. This kid did all this, and he was still in high school.
Yeah. So, hey, man, so 2 things. One, I want to first of all commend you for what you're doing and building this. I mean, for everybody, I already commended him personally, but like he needs public praise for this. What you're doing, Jason, here is, I think it's so needed. It's so important. And, I'm really glad to see you're doing it. You've built an amazing community and providing real value to these people. And like the way that you've broken down the terms of the deal are super transparent, really equitable. And quite frankly, I'm going to share something about our conversation earlier, Jason.
Sure.
And that is, people hear the stories of the artist getting screwed over by the label or the business manager, right?
Yes.
The stories that you don't hear is when the artist screws over the manager mostly, right?
The
manager mostly.
Absolutely.
And the thing that you've built, I think, protects both sides and is fair to both sides. And I just think it's really worth. You really deserve to be commended for putting this thing together, man. I think it's awesome, and like you're protecting yourself, but you're also providing like incredible value. And I just think the people who are fortunate enough to see the value in it and join and then actually participate and engage are going to really, really benefit from this, man.
I definitely obviously appreciate it. Coming from you, that means a lot for sure. Just being that you've been living in this space, right? We know, I may explain what I'm doing to some peers and they may not get it yet for real, like, why would you want to do it this way? But for me, much like you said, the references that you made, going to BMI or ASCAP or something, we know that if you're going to have a scalable business, you're going to have to make that entry point so even kill, right? So to me, I just looked at it and I said, hey, I want to do business in a different way. I've of course done business in a very personal way. Hey, it's us, we're family, and that's cool. But now I want to be more like, I want to take hip hop into the next phase. You know what I mean? I want to build a brand that's, that takes what Def Jam did and evolves that, right? Because to me, Def Jam was not like a crew like a Rockefeller or a Grand Hustle or a QC or No Limit. Like, those were all like artist-driven companies, So at the end of the day, of course, they were positioned in a certain way. But to me, to really look at the culture and say, okay, this is what we've done. This is great. We know we can go in the clothing business, we can go in the liquor business, we can go into these different, businesses, even when it comes to diversifying our offerings. But I'm looking like, okay, what is beyond 2020 for real? So I'm super excited, man. And I tell people I'm so just focused on the future. Like what is. Of course, what happened, using that information, experiences as a resource to, kind of empower me even more for the future. But just excited about where the business is going because, we're at a very interesting time and it's a freaking pandemic, right? Like the first time in 100 years, man. Like, so it's like, when you study history and you see like, okay, like so much innovation comes during these times, So it's been
Well,
exciting.
you know, and I also say that this is another thing that we talked about. You can jump on a call, or I can jump on a call with someone and give them, you know, a ton of insight and wisdom, and you know, in a few minutes, and you know, whatever. You have a 30-minute call and give someone a huge amount of insight. And what people don't realize is that 30 minutes is really 20, 25 years. You get, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's not just 30 minutes. You're getting, you know, decades of experience and knowledge. And I feel like part of the reason why I'm so excited to be partnering with you, you know, for the Music Business Toolbox and Heavy Sound is because we're philosophically aligned, man. Like I genuinely want to see more people be successful. You know, I believe the world will be a better place when more musicians can focus their energy on making music rather than bartending or whatever it is.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like if you can do that and make a living doing that, man, it's just, the world is a better place, man. And you know, I want to make sure that the next T.I. or Kanye West or, you know, G.O.O.D. or, you know, Roots, or any of these artists that we've had the opportunity, Travis Scott, that we've had the opportunity to work with over these years, isn't selling shoes.
Yeah. Now you're right. It's those fine lines, right? Like it's those fine lines. Kanye could have been there versus here, like, you know. So I think that's really what was great about the community in general, right? Like, you know, guys like ourselves that are still interested and believe in a developmental process, you know, because I think on so many different levels, from just music as well as to me personally, when it comes to the Black community, you know, you can't deny, like, yo, music is an incredible natural resource for Black people, period.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's probably one of the fastest ways to really, you know, turn something into nothing into something, rather, you know? So I'm always mindful of that as well. And something that I also say to myself is like, yo, it's 2020, it's time for new millionaires, you know? So as I'm thinking about these young guys and females that I'm going into business with, you know, we have those thoughts, like you said, like seeing Kanye's and Tips and Travis's and all of those people at day one. So, you know, like that's the shit that I'm excited about. Like, okay, like I want to be a part of these guys, you know, this next batch that are going to become millionaires over these next 5 years, you know, and just trying to be there, you know. So 1,000,000%, the Music Toolbox is definitely going to be on our platform, made available to our audience, because I think it's a great offering. I think it's a necessity. You know, I'm trying to turn, you know, Heavy Sound Labs into a social utility for just music lovers in general. And I think that it's a necessity rather for artists, managers, you know, to have, and it's a great freaking deal for the price. And clearly, you're coming in with even a great offering, value-wise, discount-wise, to the Heavy Crew as well. So these guys,
heavy Crew gets a heavy discount, man. Heavy Crew gets a heavy discount for sure, man. So yeah, just, you know, it's musicbusinesstoolbox.com/heavy sound, and you know, discounts built right into it if you go to that link. So I am genuine when I say I want to see more people succeed. I want to see people, you know, and I'm excited too, man. I don't know if I even told you about this, but there's like a number of universities are using it as their required text now. So it's pretty cool. Like, you know, even here, like at Kennesaw State University, you know, they got the Joel Katz School of Music, Business, and Entertainment. So it's a required text for that. I'm actually I'm a executive in residence up there, so I'm like an associate professor doing that, and we're using using the book and the tools to help teach some classes. But man, I really want I put in a lot of effort to make sure, like you're talking about how, you know, you want to make your contracts easy to read. Man, I put so much effort into making sure that it wasn't like some of these other music business books that are, you know, they're written by lawyers and for lawyers. Like, you know, if you want to debate, you know, section 115 of the copyright law, don't get my book. Like, it's not going to help you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yep. If you want to know how to get paid when your music gets played on digital radio, though.
Yep. Real life, real time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And so I think it's also dope about what you're doing is providing real practical insight, and it's not just theoretical BS, man.
Absolutely. Let's be honest, man. It's when in music, like you said, so many universities are offering these music schools, and it's great, you know, for people to get educated. But it's a funny business. You know, you gotta always say, like, people talk from safe places and offices. You know, you gotta kind of get your hands dirty because, you know, of course, it's a creative industry, so it's always changing as well, right? Like things that people say that'll never happen. The next person comes along and they did everything they told me they wouldn't do with them. You know what I'm saying? Like, so just kind of, you know, just knowing, man, that you know, you really truly, it's a real value of learning from people that have been in the field and played the game, you know?
Yeah,
So,
man. Yeah,
man, I appreciate you coming, bro, and spending the time with us and sharing information, and look forward to building and obviously doing more with you, aligning in more ways with you, because as you said, it only makes sense.
all good. And in fact, you know, I thought about like if you want to like do like if there's like some other sessions or something like that that you want to do where we do like a deep dive on a particular topic.
Definitely. Yep.
I'm all about it.
Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Heavy Talk. Please be sure to subscribe and comment below, and stay tuned for new episodes coming very soon.